What is up, everybody? BK Voiceover here, and welcome to my latest video as a part of this Seahawks offseason. So right now we're heading into a pretty quiet part of the offseason. So OTAs and a mandatory minicamp have come to a close, and now there is going to be about a 6-week kind of quiet period for most of the NFL between when they begin, or when they finish OTAs and when they start training camp for the team. So because of that, I think that this would be a fun time to go and take a look at the state of the roster and give my way too early 53-man roster predictions pre-training camp. Now, I will preface this by saying this is going to change. This isn't going to be correct, almost certainly. And like Clint Hurt, who's our new defensive coordinator, puts it most eloquently, no 53-man roster spots are going to be won or lost during what he calls the underwear Olympics, where they are literally not have any pads on. They're not allowed to do much contact practices. It's all like jerseys and conditioning and just like 7-on-7 drills, but like no contact or very limited contact allowed. So this is just based on my observations so far in the offseason and what I've heard from Seahawks media, through rumors, through articles, and things along those lines. So we will be covering my way too early 53-man roster, my practice squad, and my cut prediction. So we'll go ahead and preface this by going through our recent roster moves that Seattle has gone through. So all of these are all the roster moves that have been made since I made my 90-man roster video back in a little over a month ago, so like back in early May. So as far as signings, we signed wide receiver Marquise Goodwin, NFL vet, very speedy, huge deep threat, definitely serves in more of a veteran role. I don't know if we'll kind of see what he is. Maybe he's just a camp body, but I think there's a good chance he can make the roster, as well as UDFA's Deontez Alexander and Kevin Cassis, as well as offensive tackle Liam Ryan and cornerback Elijah Jones. As far as players that have been waived and cut, they're pretty much all UDFAs or players that we signed to futures deals after the 2022 season. So we got quarterback Levi Lewis, wide receivers Jake Herslow and Demetrius Robertson, tight end John Mitchell, cornerback / wide receiver Matt Cole, and defensive end Alex Chongum. So at this point, we have one open spot on the roster going into the quiet part of the offseason between the end of OTAs and minicamp and the start of training camp. So with that, let's go and take a look at how I think the roster is going to shake out at this point. So first off, quarterback, pretty easy. I think they're going to keep two QBs on the team, and it's going to be Geno Smith and Drew Lock. There have been like rumblings like, oh, well, Seattle's still interested in Baker Mayfield if he's able to, or if they're able to like work out a deal with the Browns, but at this point it sounds like Deshaun Watson is going to have a very, very, very lengthy suspension, so it might be in the Browns' best interest to not trade Baker Mayfield at this point, because at this point, trading him, they would still need to eat a bunch of the cap space, and if they want another team to take on a lot of that cap space for his deal, then they're going to need to give up a decent draft pick in order to just get other teams to actually take him off your hands and not spend a bunch of money or have a bunch of dead cap. So yeah, Geno Smith, as it stands right now, Geno Smith has a small lead. That's mainly based on he's been in this offense for years already. He kind of has a better idea of how of the Shane Waldron system than somebody like a Drew Lock. However, I think by the time we get around to actually doing preseason games, I think it's not too far-fetched that Drew Lock surpasses Geno Smith. Because while Geno Smith is definitely like a higher floor, Drew Lock has a higher ceiling, so I think that he'll end up having at least some impact on the offense this season. And then on the practice squad, Jacob Eason, we got him off of waivers from the Colts last season. Still have him under contract for 2 more seasons, but again, if he's sent to the practice squad, that will be waived. So yeah, he will be your QB3 in those situations. And those are the only 3 we have on the roster, so no cuts. Taking a look at running back / fullback, I know that Nick Bellore is technically listed as a linebacker on the Seahawks site, but he plays that fullback / linebacker role. He plays on offense, he plays a lot on special teams, so I'm including him with the running backs in this case. So taking a look at your 53-man roster, I have Rashad Penny, Kenneth Walker, Travis Homer, DJ Dallas, and Nick Bellore all making the 53-man roster. I have Rashad Penny, you signed him to a 1-year, $5.75 million deal. Assuming he's fully healthy and he can recreate the success that he had in the last third of the season last year, I think that he will be your RB1. Followed up closely by Kenneth Walker III, arguably the best running back in the entire draft last season out of Michigan State. Dude is a very violent back. He is going to absolutely go through guys like a hot knife through butter. He's great at breaking tackles. Needs to work on his pass protection. But yeah, I think he is going to slot in as your RB2. Then for backups, you got Travis Homer. He'll be your third down back. DJ Dallas, he is your depth. And then Nick Bellore is going to be your only fullback on the roster. Josh Johnson, who was on the practice squad for the majority of last season, I think he goes on the practice squad. I think he has a lot of potential. I would love to see him on the field more, but yeah, at this point I'm only planning on keeping 4 running backs, and I think all 4 of these guys are better than Josh Johnson as it stands. And then as far as cuts, I have Chris Carson and Darwin Thompson being cut. Now, Chris Carson could very well go on IR at the start of the season. There's another very important date coming up in a week or so where they're going to determine if Chris Carson is going to be able to return and play through contact in the NFL. And if that neck injury is just too much, then he's probably going to be a cut. And cutting him at this point would save the Seahawks $4.6 million against the cap, right? So as much as I hate to say it, yeah, I think Chris Carson's going to be cut, as well as Darwin Thompson. He was a off-season signing, so no biggie there. Wide receiver depth. I have them keeping 6 wide receivers right now, but I could very well see them only keeping 5. And if that's the case, I think Marquise Goodwin is going to be the first one out the door. But just for this way too early mock draft, I think you just have too much talent in the wide receiver room as it stands, too much untapped potential to only keep 5 wide receivers on the roster. So first 4 make a ton of sense. Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, D. Eskridge, Freddie Swain, they are all locks as far as I'm concerned to make the 53-man roster. Marquise Goodwin, I have him making it now. He's very much on the fence. I feel like if they only keep 5 wide receivers on the roster, then I think Marquise Goodwin is going to be the one who gets shown the door. And then I have Bo Melton being your last wide receiver. I know he's been injured for most of camp, but I think getting him in the 7th, he is a very high upside receiver with a lot of special teams chops. So I think if you cut him and you throw him on the waiver wire following the cut down dates, I don't think you're going to get Bo Melton back. So I think it's very smart to just stash him on the 53-man. If you want to make moves later, go for it. But yeah, I don't. If you waive Bo Melton, you're not going to get him back, as far as I'm concerned. Taking a look at the practice squad, Derek Young, 7th round pick. We took him 3 picks after Bo Melton. So unfortunately, I like Derek Young. I like his upside. He kind of can play that sort of Cordero Patterson role in this offense. Doing a lot of stuff out of the backfield, but there's just not enough room. I couldn't find anybody else on this roster that I could cut in order to bring Derek Young on board. But I think that if he is waived, I think you can get him on the practice squad pretty easy. So yeah, Derek Young, as well as Penny Hart and Cody Thompson. Penny Hart, he made the 53-man the past couple of years, but he's always a camp warrior. He always does amazing in camp, and then it just never translates to actual games. So I think he makes the practice squad this time. I just think there's better wide receivers on this roster than him. Excuse me. And then the last one I have making is Cody Thompson. I've just heard he is a key special teamer. He was a fantastic special teamer last year, got called up quite a few times to the 53-man roster. Had a great special teams play along with Travis Homer in the final game of the season. I think keeping Cody Thompson in some capacity is a must. I've even seen a couple of people predicting that he even makes the 53-man roster. Some people have him ahead of Marquise Goodwin and Bo Melton, and I would kind of have him ahead of Bo Melton just because he's been dealing with some nagging injuries, so he hasn't been able to get a ton of work. But I think the upside for Melton is higher, so I'm going to keep Melton there. So yeah. Practice squad, Derek Young, Penny Hart, Cody Thompson, and unfortunately that means I have to cut Cade Johnson, who was my UDFA darling last season. I really wanted him to make the 53-man roster. It just didn't happen. Yeah, really cool guy out of Tuscaloosa State. I had a 4th-round grade on him last season, so was shocked that he went as an undrafted free agent. But yeah, makes me sad. But yeah, have to cut him. I only have so much room, and I think all of these wide receivers are probably better than K. Johnson at this point. You can make an argument that he's better than Penny Hart, but I just haven't seen enough. And I'm also not like on the ground watching these guys every single day, unfortunately. So yeah, Aaron Fuller cut, K. Johnson cut, as well as Deontay Alexander and Kevin Cassis, who we signed to UDFA deals this offseason. Moving on to tight end, it's a little more simple. I think your 53-man roster is going to be very similar to what it was last year. No Gerald Everett. We trade as part of the Russell Wilson trade. We got Noah Fant from the Broncos. So Noah Fant, I think, immediately slides in as your tight end 1. For this team, he'll be backed up by Will Dissly as well as Colby Parkinson, who will be going into the 3rd year of his rookie deal. Tyler Mabry, this is where I think there could be a little bit of a battle, because I've heard a lot of people saying that Cade Brewer is actually showing quite a bit. So there is a possibility that he might even usurp Tyler Mabry and make it to the practice squad. But as it stands right now, nothing is like won or lost in pre-training camp. I think they're at this point, I think Tyler Mabry is ahead just because he has more experience in this offense. But yeah, I think this could be an interesting battle to watch to see whether Taylor Mabry or Cade Brewer make the practice squad. Yeah, so anyways, moving on. For offensive tackles, I have Seattle keeping Charles Cross, no brainer. We spent a 1st-round pick, a top 10 pick on him. He's obviously making the 53-man roster. Abraham Lucas, he actually recently usurped Jake Curhan for all of the first team right tackle snaps, so there is a very good chance that Abraham Lucas is your starting right tackle when everything goes down. Jake Curhan, I still have him listed under the tackles. I know he's been getting a lot of work playing right guard with the 2nd team, but I am just that might just be based on injuries. I know Gabe Jackson is also out with injury, so they're just trying to fill holes at this point. So Phil Haynes has been taking his spots, but they need somebody else to play Phil Haynes for the 2nd team. So that's Jake Curran. And then Stone Forsythe has apparently been getting a lot of the 2nd team right tackle snaps. So very good, nice pickup. I have Greg Island, who is actually teammates with Charles Cross at Mississippi State. I have him going to the practice squad, and then Liam Ryan being cut. Nothing against Liam Ryan. He has like a great frame for a right tackle. It's just there's not enough room on the 53-man or the practice squad. Interior offensive line. I think your starters are pretty well set, assuming Gabe Jackson comes back from his surgery fine and there's no like lingering issues going into the start of the season. So you're starting, and you got Damian Lewis at left guard. Austin Blythe is going to be your starting center, and then Gabe Jackson is going to be your starting right guard. Kyle Fuller will be your backup center. He can also play guard. Unfortunately, I can't stand Fuller. And then Phil Haynes is going to be your first backup guard. Taking a look at the practice squad, I have them keeping Dakota Shepley. He has been getting a lot of snaps in OTAs at guard. So could be a backup guard, but I think they more see him as like the 3rd string center. And then Shamarius Gilmore, he was originally one of my favorite my favorite UDFA to make the 53-man roster, but I think that's been taken. That has now been replaced by a different player who I like just a little bit more. And then finally cutting Pierre-Olivier Lestage. Nothing against Lestage. I just don't think there's enough room for him on this team, and I think Gilmore has higher upside. Moving on to the defensive side of the ball. Defensive tackle, I have them keeping Al Woods, Poona Ford, and Brian Monet. They keep Miles Adams on the practice squad, and they cut Matthew Gotel. I could see the practice squad, I could see Miles Adams and Matthew Gotel swapping, depending on what they're looking for. But I think they are going to need a little more like depth on the practice squad for defensive tackle. So at this point, I have Miles Adams just because he has like game day experience. So, yeah. Moving on to defensive end, I have Shelby Harris. Shelby Harris is under contract for the next 2 years. They just restructured his contract to open up some more cap space this season. Yeah, that makes sense. LJ Collier, he makes the roster purely because they need more depth at the defensive end position, and there's really nobody better than him at this point. But he has shown, as a former first-round pick, he has been a bust, a massive bust. But I think he makes the 53-man roster at this point. I could see an argument for maybe Gerard Hewitt taking his spot, but I don't think it's going to happen. So I have Gerard Hewitt making the practice squad, and then no cuts, because those are all of the guys I've classified as defensive ends. Moving on to outside linebackers, I actually have the vast majority of them making it. I have Darrell Taylor and Uchenna Nwosu being your starters. Boye Mafe, you just had him drafted. He's going to be backing up both of these guys. He'll be an active part of that rotation. Alton Robinson, he'll also make the 53-man. Even though his sack numbers did go down last season, his pressure rate per snap, his pass rush rating, like, per snap is really good, so I think they're going to keep him around. I think they just really need to get him more snaps. I think that's the biggest issue. And then I have Tyreek Smith, a 5th-round pick out of Ohio State, sneaking in as, like, your 5th outside linebacker. Nobody going to the practice squad, and then I have them cutting Josh Onujiogu, who is another UDFA that Seattle signed this offseason. Inside linebacker, this is where things get very, very interesting. Your two starting middle linebackers or inside linebackers at this point, I think, are pretty set. That's Jordan Brooks and Cody Barton. I see Joel Iyiegbuniwe making an impact. He's primarily a special teamer, but he's shown that he has some defensive chops. And then in a shocker, I have every season Seattle has. Well, not almost every season, Seattle has at least one UDFA that makes the active roster. So you got Brian Monet, you had Penny Hart, you had Poona Ford, John Radigan last season. There's usually at least one UDFA that makes the 53-man roster, and at this point, I think the one who has the best chance is By Jones. Has good coverage ability. He's good special teamer. He comes from an NFL lineage. His dad apparently played in the NFL. He won 3 Super Bowls with the Cowboys, and he has 2 brothers that play in the NFL. I think Zay Jones is one of them. Yeah. Moving on to the practice squad, Ben Burr-Kirven's still recovering from that ACL tear. Not sure if he will be ready to go, but I think he makes it onto the practice squad along with Tanner Muse and Aaron Donkor. Aaron Donkor, since he's an international player, he's an international player as part of the International Player Pathway Program, he does not count towards your practice squad cap. So having him, he's basically a free practice squad spot, so you just keep him around no matter what. There's like nothing bad about keeping him there. And then I have John Radigan and Lakeem Williams getting cut. So John Radigan, I think it's more likely he goes into IR. He's still recovering from that ACL injury, so it doesn't sound like he's going to be ready to go. Doesn't sound like he'll be ready to go at the start of the season, so that's kind of why he's in this cut category. And then I have Lakeem Williams also being cut. Just not enough room. Moving on to outside corner, I have Seattle keeping 5 outside corners at this point. So I have Sidney Jones and Artie Burns as your 1 and 2. Artie Burns has been getting the majority of the first team snaps at corner, mainly because of injuries. Trey Brown still recovering from a knee procedure, as well as some other nagging injuries. Kobe Bryant and Tariq Woolen have done some drills and some of the training activities, so they've been doing fine. It's just they've also had some like nagging injuries, so they haven't played as much as Artie Burns. So I still have all of these guys making it. I think Tariq Woolen is going to be at the bottom of the roster for the time being, but they're not going to cut him because they know if they cut him, if they cut Tariq Woolen, he's not going to make it through waivers. So keeping him as a development piece on your 53-man roster is a no-brainer at this point. Oh, that's nice. All right, moving on to practice squad, you got Mike Jackson. He actually played pretty well coming up from the practice squad and making a couple of plays. During the regular season, I think he's a no-brainer to keep on your practice squad. And then I have 2 UDFAs, Josh Valentine-Turner and Elijah Jones being cut. I did tie together nickel corner and safety because I feel like in some cases they're a bit interchangeable. But your 53-man roster, I have Quandre Diggs and Jamal Adams. Your starting free safety and strong safety, Justin Coleman is going to be your starting nickel corner. Marquise Blair can back up any of those safety positions. He can also play a little bit in nickel, probably. And then Ryan Neal is going to be your dime corner a lot of the time. On the practice squad, I have John Reed and Bubba Bolden. John Reed played good. He played mainly outside, but I think I see him more as like a slot corner. And then Bubba Bolden, fantastic player out of, I think he went to Florida, if I remember correctly. But anyways, Florida or Miami. I can't remember exactly. But yeah, Bubba Bolden's a fantastic player. I don't think there's enough room for him on the 53-man roster, but I think he's a prime candidate to add to your practice squad. And then with cuts, I have the Seattle cutting Ugo Amadi. I know, not a kind of a bigger, I guess not a shock. He's set to make a lot more money this season because he has a performance enhancement to his contract coming up. So you would save like $2.5 million by cutting him, and he has not played amazing the past year or so, so I think cutting Ugo Amadi makes a lot of sense. Joey Blunt, Josh Jones played one game for us last season. He actually had a pass deflection. He was pretty good. There's just not enough room, and I think that there are some better players on here. And then Joey Blunt, Deontay Williams, Scott Nelson, they were all UDFAs, and there's just no room for them on the roster. As far as specialists go, Jason Myers is still going to be your kicker. Michael Dixon is going to be your punter. Tyler Roth's going to be your long snapper. Nobody on the practice squad. Nobody cut. No nothing. So here's your full 53-man roster prediction, broken down a little bit, so I'll just run through that again. So quarterback, I got Geno Smith and Drew Lock. Running back / fullback, I got Rashad Penny, Kenneth Walker, Travis Homer, DJ Dallas, and Nick Bellore. Wide receiver, I've got Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, D. Eskridge, Freddie Swain, Marquise Goodwin, and Bo Melton. Tight end, I got Noah Fant, Will Dissly, and Colby Parkinson. Offensive tackle, I got Charles Cross, Abraham Lucas, Jake Curran, and Stone Forsyth. Interior offensive line, I got Damian Lewis, Austin Blythe, Gabe Jackson, Phil Haynes, and Kyle Fuller. Defensive tackle, I got Al Woods, Poona Ford, Brian Monet. Defensive end, I got Shelby Harris, Quentin Jefferson, and L.J. Collier. Outside linebacker, I got Daryl Taylor, Uchenna Nwosu, Boye Mafe, Alton Robinson, and Tyreek Smith. Inside linebacker, I got Jordan Brooks, Cody Barton, Joel Iyiegbuniwe, and Vi Jones. Cornerback, I got Sidney Jones, or outside corner, I got Sidney Jones, Artie Burns, Trey Brown, Kobe Bryant, and Tariq Woolen. Nickel corner / safety, I got Quandre Diggs, Jamal Adams, Justin Coleman, Marquise Blair, and Ryan Neal. Kicker, I got Jason Myers. Punter, I got Michael Dixon. And long snapper is Tyler Rott. And that is your 53-man roster. Moving on to the practice squad, we got quarterback Jacob Eason, running back Josh Johnson, wide receiver Penny Hart, wide receiver Derek Young, wide receiver Cody Thompson, tight end Tyler Mabry, offensive tackle Greg Island, center guard Dakota Shepley, guard Shamarius Gilmore. Defensive end, Gerard Hewitt. Defensive tackle, Miles Adams. Linebacker, Ben Burr-Kirven. Linebacker, Tanner Muse. Linebacker, Aaron Donkor. Cornerback, Michael Jackson. Nickel corner, John Reed. And safety, Bubba Bolden. And with that, that is the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like what I do, you want to see more Seahawks content, let me know. Be sure to throw a like on that video. Comment down below what you think your way too early 53-man roster is going to look like for Seattle. If you want to keep up to date with all the latest Seahawks news, be sure to hit the subscribe button below and hit the bell icon to be notified when I post new videos. So thank you guys so much once again. And as always, go Hawks.